and welcome to today's painting demonstration. This is our beginner-friendly fall tree painting demo number 3. So if you are interested in painting lots of lovely fall colors, then go ahead and check those other 2 demonstrations out. But this one is going to be a little bit different. Instead of starting with a really warm yellow to gold and orange underpainting, I'm going to be starting with the very far distance and painting up. So painting from back to front, while also keeping in mind some of our lighter colors. We want to use the vibrancy of the paper to bring those out. Now, because this is a fairly difficult painting that we're trying to simplify for it to be beginner friendly, I have eliminated lots of the detail. And I've really studied it, and then I did some color studies last night and even did a little bit of practice painting on this, and now I feel confident that we can get it simplified down to something that's manageable for people as long as you're doing things in the right steps. So I have also changed the panel that I'm painting on. I wanted to go something that was a little bit wider than it was tall instead of the square for this painting, since there's so much gradating color moving from left to right. I wanted to be able to convey that more, and the added vertical, horizontal dimension is going to help with that a lot. So I'm going to start with that dreamy blue color. Don't pay any mention to this. This is just half burnt sienna and half ultramarine blue, and that's our dark value, but I have that mixed up from last week. And it's just there to help us mute down some of the color here. I don't quite want it that dark. So this is ultramarine blue, a little bit of cerulean blue, and burnt sienna, then white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using vertical brush strokes. Right now I have a medium amount of water in my brush. And that is giving us a good amount of transparency. I have my primary tree forms penciled out, but I don't have any of the little secondary ones. There will be more. Now, as I'm coming over to the right, I'm going to change the color on my brush and just blend back into what I've already applied. Now I'm going to add a little bit of yellow and a little bit of white. Mix that right into what I have. Important to maintain just vertical brush strokes on this part. Now a little bit more white, a little bit more yellow, and continuing on. Now right about in this region, the image has a little bit more blue at the top than at the bottom. So now it's not just gradating from left to right, it's also has some differences from top to bottom, which I find interesting. So the reason why the filbert brush is so nice in this case is I don't have any hard lines. So I can just drag from the bottom and incorporate a little bit more yellow down there. If it's not quite covering, add some white to your yellow. Now it's time to keep on going to the right. I need to mix a little bit more color, and I don't want to go too saturated. Oops. If anything, the color is getting more muted as we move towards the right. Just picked up some titanium white on my brush to give the middle area a little bit of light streaking down. A little bit of that effect. And then as we move over towards the right side of one of our main trees, I'm going to add just a little bit of orange, making the orange out of cadmium red and cadmium yellow. Maybe just a touch of burnt sienna to warm this color up. Incorporating it on the left side of the tree. I'm pulling just a little bit more dark color on the right. And I think we are good to go on that. So now what I'm going to do is the light foliage that's mostly in the background. I'm going to switch over to my smaller filbert brush. Cadmium yellow and white. I'm not going to go crazy with the yellow. This is going to be more of a highlight. This is going to highlight this light tree here. And I'm going to go up with the yellow and just tickle the top of the composition and then come back down, and then that's going to kind of blend into orange. But I am going to be using a lot of layering. So this color is going to develop as we go. Anywhere you need this to cover a little bit better because of blending, go ahead and add some white. You could always add some white and then layer up with more yellow if you want it to be a stronger yellow color. I am going to also use a warm color made with this white, yellow, but then a little bit of burnt sienna just to warm it up and darken it a bit. And this is going to be the midground. That got a little dark, so I'm going to lighten that up a bit. Should probably be lightest right where that sun is coming down to the forest floor. I don't want that line to be too hard, so I'm softening that up, giving myself a vanishing edge right there. Now that that midground is painted in, I'm going to move to the foreground, which I'm going to make pretty dark. This is the half burnt sienna, half ultramarine blue color that I use all the time as my darkest value. So this is going to be the darkest value. I'm not super fussy about my line. It will make it more interesting, I think visually appealing, if you're not super hard on the edge. Break it up a bit. Even let the color from your previous layer come through. That will be a lot more interesting. Okay. Before I start doing tree trunks, which it's getting close to that, I am going to put down some color for the sky, where the sky is going to be popping through. So I'm going to clean my filbert off really well, and then the sky is going to be a light blue. I'm going to go ahead and I'm fine with mixing it right here in this muddy zone. So that's just going to mute our color a little bit, and I think for this application, that's going to be just great. Okay, so I want a couple of strategically placed sky zones. I want them to be a little bit wider. On one side, more towards the horizon side. That's 2 sky areas, and then maybe just a little bit more here. Okay, now I'm putting that filbert aside, and I'm going to switch over to my number 1 liner brush. This part I thought was a little bit tricky when I did the test run. So I'm going to try to use different versions of this bark color. Now, the further away the trees, the more diffused into the background they will be, but the background has a lot of different colors going on, so I'm going to try to use water to make the paint transparent to help us achieve that effect. So what you'll want to do is just make your darkest value, which is half ultramarine blue and half burnt sienna. It's okay if that's on the warmer or cooler side of things. It doesn't need to be exact. So now you have your darkest value right there, a big pile of it. Maybe I'll do a little bit more. So we're going to make a gradient out of this. This painting might end up being more of an intermediate difficulty level, mostly because of this step right here, I believe. Added a little bit of white to get the next color lighter. And bluer. Now I'm out of cerulean blue, so I'm going to add more of that on our palette because I don't believe that I'm fully done with that color yet. Want that medium gray to be a lot cooler than it was. Okay, and now that is our lighter, cooler gray. I think that's what we're gonna need to get started. So, I'm gonna start on the left side. Right now I have a good amount of water in my brush, and I'm using that medium cool gray and focusing on vertical brush strokes. I'm changing the angle of my hand to make this easier on myself, and also everything that's here is dry, so that helps out a bunch. And I'm just going to be adding some really vague background trees, and if the branches and the trunks kind of fade into the distance, like fade, they don't need to attach to the ground or the top, is what I mean by fade into obscurity. I'm gonna help that one fade a little bit better by just smashing that bottom edge with my finger. Now, as I'm moving across, I'm going to pick up lighter color, and I'm going to make sure that there is a good amount of water in my brush, and that'll help it be transparent. Progressively more water. And a little bit lighter. As my brush has less paint in it, I am moving towards that really, really light area in the middle of that background gradient, just very delicately fading some little vertical tree trunks and branches. Coming over to the right side, the background is getting darker again, so now I'm going to move back down my gradient. I'm in the medium blue-gray territory. It looks rather nice on this warm background. Now that I've gotten all the way over to the right, I'm going to come back to the left and just put some overlapping branches at the top, on the top edge there. Just crisscrossing back and forth. Okay, now we're ready for the main trunks. This one in the foreground is going to be dark, and those two in the midground are going to be lighter. There is going to be some texture. So I'm going to start with the dark tree, and I have my really, really dark value here. I want to be careful because all these little branches that had a ton of water in them are not dry. Instead of keeping the bottom of this trunk flat, I'm going to go ahead and just make some root shapes down at the base to help that feel a little bit more natural. I have some pencil marks that I'm following along with on this main tree. Most of the other ones, whatever happens, happens. Just thickening up that branch, or that line right there on the left side. I believe that if there was a really strong sun or light source, I believe it's coming from above this middle right third right there. But we are solidly in the forest, so it is hard to tell. Maybe like a middle afternoon or late afternoon lighting, even with all that fog. Now I'm going to go up to my darker gray. Don't worry too much about being so detailed on the little branches, because that is going to get painted over. I grabbed a lighter gray for the light or right side of the tree. All right, coming all the way down this thin little tree, I'm going to make sure that the base is a little bit thicker than the mid-ground and then the top. doing a little bit of dry brush blending at the base, which is tragically difficult with a script brush, by the way. That's okay. I'm about to grab my flat to do some of the texture on the tree, so I'll just blend the bottom in while I'm at it. There we go. So, titanium white, I'm right on the edge of that gray tree trunk color that we mixed earlier. Now, horizontal strokes, flat brush, and I am going to work my way up the middle of the tree. And I'm going to also leave some spots untouched by that. Go back and overlap some things. A little bit of vertical brush strokes on the light side of the tree. Going back and forth from a dark gray to a brush stroke that has a little bit more white in it. And I'm going to try to alternate that for a natural look. All right, now just a little bit of this on that dark tree. I'm gonna even go to the darker gray. Good amount of water, and now just a little bit of texture. When that dries, it'll be more transparent as well. All right, congratulations if you have made it this far. You are now arriving at the fun part. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the flat brush, and I'm going to pick up some quinacridone magenta and just darken it up a little bit with our burnt sienna ultramarine blue dark value. And get that really, really rich. It's looking like a mulberry right now. And on the dark forest edge, I'm going to be bringing that in, and I'm going to use these dancey brush strokes. Little circles, just dabbing things on. I'm dragging that from the tops for the trees, and then also from the bottom. I'm going to try to do this in bunches. So they look like they belong to the same plant. I do want to use a little bit of this on the bottom on the right side. Keeping these shapes really vague, using the side of my brush. Just a little bit of this on the right, not as much as on the left. I want the left to be very obviously darker. There is going to be some layering, so I'm going to take that color and on the side of it I'm going to add cadmium red medium. So this is going to go from a very, very cool red to a warm red, and using those exact same brush strokes but overlapping what is previously there. And without leaving any white. That's the thing about not doing any underpainting, is you don't want to leave any white around because that is jarring and not the program. We're doing a really different painting technique to the normal way that I show on here. I'm just dragging this red across a lot of the purple that I put down previously, and it's giving nice transitions, going from that cool red to a really, really warm red. And I'm going to do the same again, but now I'm going in the direction of orange. Don't worry about covering up the branches, we can bring those back out. There's still a little bit of that cool red in my brush, and it's going to make our orange a little bit more earthy, and that's fine at the beginning. Felt like the orange was a little too thick in that spot, so I just rinsed out the filbert really quick, and I am dragging it over some other areas, and that'll give us a much nicer blend. Okay, I'm going to rinse out this brush really well because I want that cool red out of it. I'm going to make sure to use the clean water as well because I want this orange to be nice and clean. And I am going to keep this filbert, this rinsed out filbert handy, because that really does help when you put a little too much down if you overstep in an area. You can also go back to the previous color and overlap it, and I might be doing a little bit of that integration here as well. Now I'm going back to my cadmium red. This is just straight cadmium red, and I am overlapping any areas that I feel like need to be blended a little bit better. So I'm going to make that color a little bit dynamic, more dynamic. And instead of focusing on individual leaf shapes while doing this, focus more on giant branches, like whole entire branches worth of leaves. And then just let the viewer's imagination create the leaf shapes. This is more about like big dynamic color. Very impactful. Now I ran out of yellow on my palette, which doesn't happen that often. This is a bigger painting. We're using a little bit more paint than usual. And also with all this thick paint layering, that is going to use a bit more as well. I'm going back and forth a lot right now. This is just integrating colors in. I'm adding orange to the yellow and yellow to the orange and more orange to the tops of the reds, and just making sure that things feel at home where I've put them. I'm bringing some really, really vague leaf colors down the trunks a bit. And I want to do that with that light yellow too, but I want it to be a little bit more vague, so that's going to be cadmium yellow light with the titanium white, about 50-50, and then also a good amount of water in there as well, the clean water. And just lightly place and drag down. A little bit more white to that middle tree area on the foliage. White, yellow, because I have a lot of light coming in there. Okay, see a place I want to add a little bit of light on the top of the ground here. So I have a little bit of yellow and a little bit of white on my brush. I'm going to just drag that across there. All right, now I'm going to pop some branches back out over the foliage that we put on there. I'm going to grab the liner. I still have the grays all mixed up. I'm just going to pay attention to what tree I'm implying there are branches for and use the appropriate color. So I got the really dark gray on my brush right now. These branches just have to be approximately in the right area. They don't have to be attached to anything, and actually I feel like it looks better if they're coming out of foliage and then back into foliage. They just have to be facing the right direction. These lines can be a little bit more delicate. Nothing is going to be covering them up unless you decide to kind of do another round of leaves. Okay, now that I got all those little delicate branches in, I'm gonna add a couple of negative shapes for the sky. Just a little bit, just a touch of cerulean blue. A touch of yellow. Really, really light color. But I'm gonna lay it on thick. And I'm gonna be strategic with these. I want them to go up against a branch and then come out. I'm gonna put a couple, 2 to 3 next to each other. I think this brush is a little too big for some of these spots, so I'm going to switch over to a point brush. I don't have a smaller flat available right near me, so I'm just going to use this point brush, but I'm going to make sure that it's nice and flat on one side. This is a part that I feel like is very contemplative, and I would definitely call it one of the more entertaining or fun parts for me. I think it adds a lot of magic, a little bit of a stained glass look, if you will. I think I want to keep that whole third over there really dark. In fact, this might be a little too light. It's amazing how many transitions this painting took, and we used just about all of the paintbrushes, all of the water, all of the paper towel. There's a lot going on here. I think we solidly moved into the intermediate skill level category, but I wish you the best. I mean, you can do it if you put your mind to it. Okay, that darkened that down. Now I'm gonna clean up that edge by just wiping it away. I want just a little bit more highlight on the ground. I'm gonna keep it vague and loose. Hopefully. Got some titanium white and cadmium yellow on the brush, but it's very little. And keeping the brush pretty horizontal. I just wanted a nice vague drag. Hopefully imitating some dappled light. Just putting that in a couple other places, taking it off right there though. Okay. I think that's good. That's good. The last thing I did with my practice run is I took some really diluted white and yellow and just dragged it up from the bottom and from the top in our light area, just giving an illusion of diffused foggy light touching the forest floor right there in the middle. This is just titanium white. Some of the leaves and those downward rays of light are going to be white on the yellow. All right, and I think that is gonna call it. I'm really looking forward to this tape peel because I think that's really gonna bring it to life. That was a very different kind of painting. We worked from back to front with a lot of layering and then pulling things out of the layering process and putting them back on top. So I hope that that was decently reasonable to follow along to. Let me know. And I look forward to doing another more straightforward fall painting tutorial next time. This next one is going to have water and reflections, and so it's really beautiful to incorporate those cools from the sky and the water reflection with those pops of the autumn color. So I really look forward to that, and I hope to you until next time, happy painting.